What is up, everyone? This is Luke from Mad Raving Geeks, and today I'm going to be explaining why Thor Ragnarok is the best MCU film so far. Now, this is a new series that I'm going to be doing where I talk about some of my favourite and some of the most interesting films I've seen, in a sort of essay-style explanation as to why I think they're interesting. In this video, I've decided to talk about Thor Ragnarok, but if you've got any other suggestions for future films, they can be new ones, old ones, whatever. Leave them in the comments below. Now this will contain a lot of spoilers, and you've been warned. So without further ado, here is why I think Thor Ragnarok is the best MCU film so far. Right off the bat, we're hit with a new side of Thor that we've never seen before. His comedic talent. Chris Hemsworth as an actor is really funny in real life. If you want an example of this, look at the new Ghostbusters film. In that, he's hilarious. But we've never been able to see this in his role as Thor previously, because he's supposed to be this omnipotent Norse god who shouldn't have feelings. So seeing it within the first 30 seconds of this film shows that not only is this a new style of film, but it's also a new Thor. It gives us a hint as to the rest of the film as well and what to expect later. We see in the rest of the film that Thor loses many things like his hair, his eye, his father, his home, and all this is done to try and build a new Thor, a better Thor. Just a little side note, this redesign of Thor in the film is based on the Thor from the Ultimate comic series, just thought you'd like to know that. But it also makes Thor a more relatable character. Previously he was this all-powerful god, but this film strips all that away, showing that even a god can reach the bottom and still come back even more powerful than before. That was one of the problems with Thor previously. He wasn't relatable as a hero, but this film redefines this and shows us, under all the jokes and CGI, that even the most unreliable characters can be changed. Also, just a little. Moving on, this film was a massive gamble on Marvel's part. They took a relatively unknown director and tasked him with saving the Thor franchise. Taika Waititi had previously directed What We Did in the Shadows and Hunt for the Wilder People, which were great films by the way, and so it was probably the best choice Marvel could have made, as he's able to balance story and comedy as seen in this film. He was able to keep a lot from the old films, like the setting of Asgard and the mythos of the franchise, but still blend it with a new spark of comedy and future technology, without making it look too silly. Marvel took a huge risk with Ragnarok, but it showed that they're still able to produce new films in new genres that are just as exciting as the originals. We've seen this tone combination from Marvel previously with Logan, instilling a much grittier and darker story with superheroes, and now combining comedy with superheroes. We see lots of Taika's work in this film, with the amazing CGI work, the use of music, the art style of each scene, and of course his comedy techniques. Characters like the Grand Master, Valkyrie and Korg, even Hulk, are all ones that we've hardly ever seen before, and yet his story writing skills builds up their character instantly, and we get a feel for every aspect they bring to the story. Talking about the characters, Taika does an amazing job showing the comedy of Korg, the power of strength of both Valkyrie and Hela. Korg is used just there for laughs, and yet we already feel connected to him. I've heard lots of people say coming out of the film that Korg was their favourite character, not just because of his comedy, but just the whole air of the character was so good, and only a director like Taika could create something like that. And with Valkyrie, it's again showing that, like with Black Panther, that you can have powerful woman characters that are just as good, if not better, than the main protagonist. And of course there's some funny moments mixed in with Valkyrie as well, like when she enters and she falls off the ship. It's things like that, where Taika is able to combine such a cool character with a bit of comedy, and it works so well to create just a funny feeling to this film. And with Hela, as soon as she appears, she smashes Mjolnir. This shows just how powerful she is. And even Thor and Loki can tell that, because Loki is the one to call the Bifrost, because he's scared, he wants to run away. Everyone can feel her power, even us as the audience. And we see that when she's fighting, when she uses her horns on her helmet to help her block to block blows to her when she's fighting. It just shows her power and her determination that she's been locked away, and as soon as Odin dies, she comes back. She instantly appears. That's something that I think not many directors are able to do. And of course, the one thing that really sticks out with this film is the whole feeling of it. Instantly, it's completely different from anything we've seen. Taika combines, like we said before, the medieval, the Norse mythology, but then he adds this comedy, and he has a new aspect, this techno-futurism, this idea that there's, like when Thor goes to Sakaar, there's just outrageous colours, strange costumes. These sorts of things wouldn't work if it was set on Earth. But the fact that it's so outrageous, it just works. It's like in Star Wars, you see all these crazy character designs, and yet they seem to work. It's just so cool that he was able to do this. And we're hit with the techno right off the bat. This revamp of a genre that didn't really kick off, but now he's able to combine it with something else to give it a new feeling. And it's so good, and only he would be able to do that. And of course, he uses the music as well. So when we see the title credits appear, the music playing is Magic Sword, which is a great band. You must check them out at some point. They are amazing. But there's something about techno music that it just, again, seems so outrageous, seems so weird, so unusual, that you wouldn't expect it to work, but it does. And the fact that the music playing when Thor has his battle at the beginning, the Immigrant Song by Led Zeppelin, the lyrics in that link back to Norse mythology, so he's still got ties for Norse mythology as well as the techno. And that's all just within the first 5 minutes of the film. It's such a great film that there's so many things going on, so many ideas and themes being blasted at you. It's just amazing. And we've talked about a lot of it. But one thing that I think a lot of people don't realise when they're watching this film is that the good guys don't win. As I've said before, Thor loses a lot of what made him Thor before, as in his hair, his eye, his father, his home. All that goes, all that leaves him. The idea that Thor is trying to stop Ragnarok, but in the end, starting Ragnarok is the only thing that will save him. The good guys, they don't beat Hela. They get Surtur to beat Hela. And even then, we're not entirely sure if she's actually dead. That's the thing with this film. It doesn't really have a happy ending. No one wins. The bad guys win. And it finishes with them fleeing. And in the post-credit scene, we see Thanos' ship behind theirs, showing that even at the end of the film, when we thought there was a good ending to it, they're still not done. There's still more things to happen. And that's just one of the things that appeals to me so much. And of course, I did touch on it briefly before, but we have to talk about Korg. Korg is the greatest character in any MCU film ever. He's just so funny, and the fact that Taika voices him as well is just even more hilarious, because Taika is such a funny person. He's so clever with his comedy, and like every line Korg says is funny. It's a joke. One of the best things about the film is Korg as a character. He's just so cool and manages to just be funny and pull it off really well. And obviously this film isn't just about the comedy. It's still got the storyline to it. It's still got the massive story of Ragnarok behind it. This idea of Hela trying to overtake Asgard and then get to the Bifrost so she can take over all the realms. This is still going on. This is still happening in the back of it. But it's also about Thor trying to find a new identity. And you could say the same for Hulk as well. See, Banner's been trapped as Hulk all 2 years, we find out in the film, and he's just woken up on this planet and he doesn't know what's happening. And it's all about him controlling his inner demon, literally. He's saying that he's worried that if he turns into the Hulk again, he won't be able to turn back into Banner. And it's a new side to a character we haven't seen before. And Taika manages to revamp these characters really well. They were somewhat bland and unrelatable, but now we see that they do have inner struggles. And of course, there are some characters which he doesn't touch, like Loki, which is fine. He carries on the fact that Loki is sometimes good, sometimes bad, but that Loki only does what he does to help himself out. He only wants to save the day so he can escape, and we even see that towards the end when Thor and Loki are trying to get to the Commodore. Even then, Loki is still trying to turn Thor in to get money. He's still trying to support himself, and that just proves how good a character Loki is. And it's just something that I don't think many directors have been able to do. And there's so many it seems like, whether it being on Sakaar and Asgard most of the time, you'd think that if another director did that, it wouldn't be very relatable at all. That's sort of why they had to set the first two films on Earth in parts of, because it would feel too unfamiliar. But yet, there are still things that make it seem as if it is happening on Earth, like the whole thing with Thor's comedy, that helps us to show that he is somewhat human. He does have human emotions, and that's something that's really clever that Taika did. And also setting it on Earth as well, with the bit with Doctor Strange trying to find Odin. That was really clever because it still links it in with Earth. It still ties us back to here. And when Thor and Loki meet Odin, I loved just the little sort of thing they did by setting it in Norway, because that scene was originally going to be set in just the alleyway in New York, but the way that they set it then in Norway, and how Odin says just before he dies to look out over the sea, this is home. It all links back to the origins of Norse mythology. That is where Norse mythology came from. And it's just those little things that Taika puts in, those little Easter eggs, that really help to bring the film together. You've obviously got a lot of Easter eggs in this film. I think I counted nearly 20 in it, just watching it. And it's these little things that a lot of directors do now, because it's such a good technique. But it's only really good directors that can pull it off well, like Taika Waititi or Edgar Wright. People like that are able to combine these things to make a good film. And of course, it's not about what we see as well. Some of the one thing that I really liked watching it the second time is the camera angles he uses, and the fact that although there's a lot of CGI, there's a lot that they use really effective camera angles. Like in the beginning, when Thor throws Mjolnir and the camera follows Mjolnir, it's a technique we haven't really seen before, and it's just so good. And how he uses as long shots as possible when in action scenes to show that, to try and make it seem as realistic as possible, because that's one of the downfalls Marvel films have had before, with their action scenes and their fight scenes being too jumpy and too cutty. But it's just Taika manages to change that. He manages to keep the action in the scene, but have longer, wider shots, and how he almost frames everything in the middle or along the middle somewhere, so that we don't have to move our eyes too much. We can always focus on the center of attention. The most important thing is happening right in the middle. It's just these little things that Taika does that makes this film so good. And now I'm basically going on a rant about why I love it so much. But there is so much to love. And I'm sure many of you right now probably have seen it, and you probably got a favourite character, because these characters that he introduced to us are so relatable. Like with Scourge, he's sort of forced against his will to join Hela, and yet we see little hints of just him looking uncertain to show us that he hasn't truly turned bad. He is still a hero on the inside, and a lot of people like that about Taika's work. Is he's able to make every character relatable, even someone like Hela, who's been trapped away for years, and she's just got so much determination to achieve her goal that she'll do anything, even if it means killing her own brothers. It's just these little things. The way that Taika manages to change a comic book into such a beautiful story is just amazing. There's no words for it. I'm basically saying the same thing over and over again because there is so much happening. There's so much going on. There's so many little Easter eggs. Like one of the things I spotted was on the Grand Master's tower when you see all the champions like faces on the side. So you've got people like Beta Ray Bill on there, and a later shot shows that they're building Hulk, a Hulk face, to show that Hulk is like the new champion. And I think that's just quite obvious, but it's just quite a cool thing. And another character that really stood out for me was the Grand Master, was Jeff Goldblum. He was such a good character. There was no other way that they were going to find another actor that would have done the role as good as Jeff Goldblum did. How it's sort of this mentally deranged leader who's somehow funny, but then he's also like a child in the way that his advisor seems to be more lenient than him. He's sort of acts like a child the whole time we see him. And it's just something that no one else apart from Goldblum would have been able to achieve in that role. And it's just a shame we didn't get to see more of him. But I think that's just one of the main things that Taika does, is he takes a story and every single frame he looks at it and analyzes it, and he tries his best to get that into visual on our screens at home or in the cinema. And he adds all these things to keep our attention and to make us look out for, and to just make the film seem like a way better than it is. So many little things that he does to make it seem so much better. He spends time, he spends effort trying to get the film to look as good as possible, which a lot of directors don't do. They just try and shove as much in as possible and have too many effects, whereas Taika spends time analysing his films and makes sure that they're good, they're not too over the top, or there's a bit where they're lacking something, he'll go back and add it, which we've seen in his other films. And also the whole thing with Norway, how he thought it would be better to film it in Norway, so they went back after production and refilmed that whole scene. It just shows his determination to make a film that's actually good. And okay, rant over. Okay. But what does this have against the rest of the MCU? Obviously, I basically just spent 20 minutes talking to you about why I believe that Thor Ragnarok is a good film. But how does that compare with the rest of the MCU? Well, a lot of the films we see in the MCU do have a lot of action in them. They've got obviously a lot of cinematic techniques to help them, obviously to help the action scenes in particular. And we see that with the Winter Soldier. Everything's a lot more gritty. The camera tries to follow Captain America as he's moving as much as possible to try and make the shots longer, to try and make it look more fluid. And it's done, and the lighting has changed a lot in that to make it a lot more serious, and there aren't as many vibrant colors, so that we focus our attention on Captain America and it makes him seem like it's more realistic. And But the thing with Thor Ragnarok is that they don't care about that. They don't care if there's too much color. That's even one of the comedy things in their film, is that they make fun of the amount of color. They don't care if there's too much color or if the costumes are too outrageous. They just carry on with it and make it even better. And that's one of the things that makes it better than most Marvel films, is the fact that they don't care about limitations. They're ready to take the risk and challenge those, and that's what makes it such a good film, because it's something we just haven't seen before. And a lot of the Marvel films are the same. It's the same basic outline that they use for each film that gets boring after 15 films. But the fact that they've now decided, they've taken a risk to combine it with a new genre of comedy, that really paid off. It gave us something new to see and still kept that feeling that Marvel creates in us every time we see their film. And obviously a lot of films do have little bits of comedy, like we saw that in Iron Man quite a lot. That's one of the reasons why people like Iron Man as a character, because he's got a bit of a wit and charm to him, but not on the same level as Taika. He's able to make it seem like every second he can fit a joke in, and yet still make it seem serious at the end. There's still a serious theme running through it, without it just being a mockery of the Thor franchise. And it's just, I think that's what makes it so much better, is it's just different. That's simply what it is. It's so different to what we've seen, and it just gives us the confidence to see, yes, directors should be taking risks when they come to new films. They shouldn't just copy each other. It's okay to do that, and actually it can have massive benefits for them. And I think that's just one of the things that directors have to see now, is that a lot of the films are just rewritten, or they're just copied from something else. But like we saw with Logan, that actually combining it with another genre is actually one of the best ways to do it. And I think that's why a lot of people are looking forward to seeing the New Mutants, because they're combining horror with these characters, with the superheroes, in the hopes of creating a new genre that can set a boundary like Thor Ragnarok did for other screenwriters to achieve. And it's just makes you appreciate the smaller directors sometimes as well with these sorts of films, like with Edgar Wright and Baby Driver. No one really knew who Edgar Wright was before, unless you'd seen Hot Fuzz or Shaun of the Dead. He wasn't a well-known actor like Steven Spielberg or Christopher Nolan, but yet the smaller directors are sometimes the better directors, because they spend more time analyzing their frames, making it look good, adding little details that link the beginning to the end of the story, that foreshadow something that will happen later. It's just these little things that smaller directors do that I think is a lot better choice for them. And of course, we've seen Edgar Wright direct Ant-Man, and a lot of people were surprised by Ant-Man because it was probably, after Thor Ragnarok, one of the funniest Marvel films yet, because it was this new style. Everyone liked it because of the comedy, and because he was able to turn a model train set into a massive action scene. And that's why I think Thor Ragnarok was so good, was just because of the scale of it, and the fact that someone out there who worked on their film spent months analyzing and scrutinizing each piece of information in the film. And big directors like Michael Bay don't do that. They just fill their films with explosions and CGI. So I think we can all learn something from these directors. Not only is it showing us how they can revamp a new franchise or an old franchise that needs revamping, but they're able to express themselves and show a whole new side to something that we haven't seen before. And obviously, Marvel do like to use a lot of new directors, like they did with Black Panther. And Black Panther was good because it had themes in it that would probably have seemed too risky to do by bigger directors. But it's the fact that these people take risks, they take these chances to make films good and to keep them making good like this. And obviously, the more films we make, the tougher the competition is. And Thor Ragnarok definitely had to compete with Black Panther. And in terms of box office sales, Thor Ragnarok didn't do as well as Black Panther, but I still think that Thor Ragnarok is better because although Black Panther dealt with a lot of politics, Thor Ragnarok was able to capture a new character and redo them and improve them and just make it seem so much more relatable. Now, I'm sure a lot of you will have questions about why I chose this or my reasoning behind, and feel free to say something in the comments. I'm sure I can make another video answering your questions or your queries, because that's what it's all about. It's about getting everyone's opinion, and I think that's something that a lot of directors forget to realize, is that it's not about making money anymore. Making films isn't about making money. It's about creating something for the people that they'll remember, that they'll love. It's not just cash grabs anymore, it's works of art. And that's why I think Thor is so good, because it just shows that even a massive franchise like the MCU is still able to pull off new tricks and new techniques. And I think that's why the DCEU isn't working as well, because they're trying to almost, I don't know really, they're not trying hard enough to make their stories different. We've seen Marvel films for the last 10 years now, so we're used to the sort of superheroes fighting. So when we saw the new DC films come out, no one was excited for them because it was just the same thing. So I think that's why it's a lesson for future film directors that they do need to take a big step. Sometimes if that means taking a big risk, they should do it because it can have massive benefits, like with Taika Waititi. And now I think he'll be in the marks for making a lot more films, just because he was able to make such a bad character into such a good character. So there are lots of reasons why I think Thor is the best film, but I think one of them is just isn't even the film itself, it's the director, it's the way he did it, the way he created the story. It's just no one else would have been able to do that. And we've seen many directors try and do stuff like this with when they did like Iron Man 2 and Iron Man 3. It was all very much the same. So I think that it proves that we can revamp a dead character. It proves that we can take risks in the film universe. So that's why I think that Thor is the best MCU film ever. Thank you guys for listening. I'm sure you're probably all questioning me already. You're probably all hating me for my long rant. But that's what it's all about, eh? It's all about getting everyone involved, isn't it? That's why I want you to leave a suggestion below for what we can do next. Because this channel isn't about trying to make money. We're trying to show a new side to comics, show a new side to these films, to show why they're so successful. We want everyone's opinions on them. And that's why we do this. It's for you guys, for us as well. So if you do have any suggestions for future films that you want me to talk about, then leave them down below. But I think that's it for now. So again, sorry for the rant, but my first try. So again, leave any suggestions as to how I can improve these next time. And of course, stick out your ears for the next podcast. I think we're going to be doing one of those soon, and also some more Who is DC episodes. So yeah, thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and for now, stay alert.